Hello everybody. So in this episode I wanted to jump out of Excel and start to look at the Visual Basic editor where we write our VBA, Visual Basic for Applications code. So for most people, if you've been using Excel for a while, you might want to start automating things, and there's a lot that you can do with formulas, but there's a lot more you can do when you're writing code. And VBA has a lot of power to it. So, traditionally we're sitting here in Excel, looking at we've got the Excel Workbook open, we've got our worksheet or our tabs, and we're doing our formulas. So to go behind the scenes, where all the power of VBA is, we just press Alt F11, and that takes us to the back where this Visual Basic editor is. So I know that was quite snappy. So we're here, just Alt F11, and we're into the editor. Another thing you should do is see at the top in my ribbon, I've got a tab called Developer. So that's turned off by default. So if you right click on the ribbon and go to customize the ribbon, you can go to the right hand side where you have the tabs and just make sure the developer tab is ticked, and that makes sure that the developer tab is up here on the ribbon. From here you then have the Alt F11 shortcut to go to Visual Basic, and it does the same thing. And there's a few other things that we have here as well, but for now we just want to get into the editor. So there's a lot in the editor, so I'll just go through the basic things. The first one is that on the left-hand side, we have our Project Explorer. So the Visual Basic editor is split up between sort of your workbook and then your Visual Basic modules where you'll write code that isn't specific to a sheet or workbook. You can also see I've got two projects here, the actual workbook that I'm in, which is just book 1. And there's a second one called VBA Project Personal. So the personal one is something that can, or VBA code that can move between multiple workbooks so that you've got something that you can rely on to use whenever you want. But if you want the code to work with the workbook that you're working on, you'll want to have it inside the workbook that that project is with. So for now, we'll ignore the personal.xlsb. So you'll just see the VBA project book 1 with the sheet 1 tab and one for this workbook as well. So the next thing you can see is a properties window. So when we click on each one of these objects, and that's the terminology we'll use for this. So, and just rewinding a little bit, VBA is a scripting and also an object-oriented language. So we can do things that can automate, steps or little tasks that you need done, or you can write full objects that can do all sorts of things that is very hard to explain for an introduction video. So for now, this is the workbook object, this is the object for sheet 1, and that object has a whole heap of properties. So things like displaying the page breaks, enabling auto filters, enabling calculations, whether there's pivot tables on that sheet, all the sorts of things that you are normally dealing with when you're just in that worksheet. And the same goes for the workbook. It has a name, it has all these other things that you might interact with, like a password, all sorts of stuff. So you can write code that interacts with those, or you can write code that is sort of standalone from the sheet or workbook object. So that takes us to the next thing I want to introduce you to, which is modules. So if you right click on the project and go to insert, you've got user form, modules, and class modules. So for a beginner, user form and modules are the easiest to explain. So a user form is something like a form that you fill out and then something gets done with that information. And a module is just anything else that you want to run based on certain events, like clicking a button or when a workbook opens or when it's saved and whatnot. So we're going to insert a module here and also insert a user form. So you can see on the left hand side now, we've got two more folders opened up, one for the module, one for the user form. You can see the module has its properties windows as well. Not a whole lot there because it's very basic. The user form has a few other properties because it's sort of building, it's almost like a module, but it's just got a whole lot of features that are built into it already, like a canvas that you can draw on or name and add buttons to. So for now, if we double click on module 1, then it opens up the window where we can actually write the code. So that's this whole area in between this big box. So here we can write all sorts of code that, you know, VBA expects to happen, and it can do things like debugging for us and all sorts of things. So, you know, there's a skeleton of a very bare bones script that you might use. The next thing is the immediate window. So this isn't enabled by default. So to view this immediate window, and I'll explain what it does in a second, go up to the View tab, go to Toolbars, immediate window right there. So just click on immediate window and you'll see down the bottom here that it's popped that up. So the immediate window is sort of like a, for people who are familiar with other programming languages, it's like a command line, so you can actually write stuff into that and execute it. For people who aren't familiar with programming languages, it's sort of like having a calculator screen. You know, you type in, 1 + 1, you hit enter, and in this case it doesn't work because it's expecting something else to say we want to print it out. So not as easy to use as a calculator, but for a command line, you can do these commands like debug.print means I want you to print something out and it gets printed to the immediate window. This can also work in modules. And I can run that module and it prints hello world over and over again. So the immediate window is sort of somewhere where you can expect things that are going on or write something to that window so that you can have some feedback from the program that's being run. The next thing is the locals window, and I'll do this at the same time as the watch window. So in VBA, we can define certain things called variables, like my name is Jay. So we can say, I'll get rid of this just to make it easier. I can say name equals Jay, and then debug.print name, and I can run that, and J is being a variable there, so I'll put colon so my name gets printed out there. I can see in the locals window, I'm just going to move this around the way I like it. Oops. Yeah, it's not the easiest thing in the world to use to get it the way you want. No, it does not want to play. Either way, so in the modules window, we can see sort of these variables that we define and how they're being changed throughout the program. So I've said name equals J. So in the module, and nothing is happening there, which is not what I expected to do. because it changed it back again. Sorry. So name equals J, and you can see as that steps through, the name is being populated with J, and then printing that to the immediate window. So that's sort of the very quick introduction to the Visual Basic editor, where you can write your VBA code. For now, I'll leave it at that, and we'll come back and we'll do some basic code writing to do certain things. Just to give you a quick sneak peek of what actually happens with the editor, I'm just going to quickly go back to Excel and hit the record macro button. So this is going to record all the things that Excel does under the hood to emulate what we are actually doing. So if I just hit record macro, it creates a new module with a name, and we store that in this workbook and hit OK. And then I'm just going to do something basic like select the cell A1, type in J, and I might rename the worksheet to J as well, or J's worksheet, and hit enter. Then I'm going to stop the recorder, go back to the editor. You can see this module 2 has been created, and some VBA has been recorded. So I selected range A1, I typed in that cell my name, I then selected on A2, which was what happened when I hit the enter button. Then I selected the sheet 1 and I renamed it to J's worksheet. So, you know, we can go back to, we can go here and rename this to something else. We can delete everything here and then run everything that was inside this worksheet. So we selected A1, we typed our name in there, we selected A2, which was hitting enter, we selected sheet 1, which has now been renamed to something ridiculous. So I'll rename this back to sheet 1. So we selected sheet 1, we renamed it J's worksheet, and we stop. So it's that easy to sort of replay those steps that you want to do and automate those tasks. So that's all I wanted to show you today. It's a bit to take in the editor. There's a lot in there, so I think it's going to be a lot easier to just show you some really basic things. So I'll come back and do another video and we'll work through an actual problem. So I hope you got something out of that. Sorry it was a little bit scrappy and I got a few little things wrong, but hey, that's life. We Google it, find out the answer, and move on. Alrighty, have a good one. Bye.